Yo, yeah, we're back again. Okay, a little sip of tea before I start. Good stuff. Watch my lips, I'm going to talk now. Okay, I have I'm in a kind of a frivolous mood here. It's Sunday afternoon, and well, it's a shitty day outside, but it's nice and warm in the room here, and the vibes are good. So hang in with me a bit there. This could get interesting. Okay, somebody did a request video and asked me to talk about triggers. Well, unfortunately, I got rid of all my rifles quite a while ago, so I can't really talk about triggers. Of course, I could, go on the internet here and go to a place where they sell rifles, and I could give you a demo and talk about triggers and pull and all that kind of stuff. Trigger, bang, you're dead kind of thing. So, but that's the wrong kind of triggers, I think, that the lady was asking about. I think the triggers that she was asking about was where you get somebody that says something to you and triggers a reaction from your emotional body that causes you to explicitly explain or defend or get upset, whatever. And I think if you really want to, I think a lot of people would have to at some point would admit that they all have triggers. And the one thing that actually really reflects your trigger reflection is when you have the popular episode that happens in your life. The twin flame connection was one of them, or the soulmate connection, or the divine partner connection, or whatever other label you want to use, is you are definitely going to become an expert on triggers now. And the best way that I can offer advice and help is this, is if you really want to find out all about your triggers, where they are, and how to address them, I highly recommend that you join a twin flame group. And once you do, it will not take you very long to get your triggers exposed like a raw nerve or a toothache. And everybody in the group will be able to see how you handle it. So does everyone have triggers? Oh yeah, they do. And I'm no exception to the rule. However, I'm going to share one of my triggers that it took me quite a while to deal with, and this may be helpful to other individuals, all right? When I was a kid, my dad was a very critical and judgmental man. And he was constantly putting myself and my brother down through these manifestations and others, but I'm not going to get into it in the long term. So that I became very much defensive and protective of myself. And for a great many years, I was not handling criticism very well. And as a matter of fact, I think the greatest test of time for me was when I first went on YouTube, and right away I found out that the information that Nicole and I were giving was very much different than what was going on YouTube at that particular point in time. 10 years is a long time ago. Most of you can't even remember last week, let alone 10 years ago. And I was barraged with all kinds of critical, judgmental, and downright rude comments on my first bunch of videos. And to say the least, I was crushed. And I found myself in a situation of having to defend myself, which I felt was necessary. And I did so. And I got into a lot of confrontations with individuals who had no other purpose than just to get into a confrontation with me, and that was their sole purpose in doing it. And I very quickly realized that something was amiss because I was having all of these bad reactions. So I think the first thing that I did when it came to triggers that I personally recognized is whenever someone hits your button, or your trigger, if you want to call it that, where the hell is that coming from in the first place? In the first place, it's coming from the emotional body. The emotional body can be considered also, in other terms, being the pain body. Because if you've had any traumas in your life, be that as they may, whatever they may be, they're going to exist in the pain body. When your self-confidence, your self-esteem, your self-worth, and your self-respect as an individual in any way is abused, manipulated, controlled, bashed, kicked, whatever, when you were a kid or a teenager, you are at that particular point taking up a very defensive, protective shell created by the ego. And that protective shell is of the emotional body. So what happens is a trigger gets constructed that may sit there and lie dormant for years before it finally expresses. And one of the things that I have noticed in regards to the twin flame connection is this: because the twin flame connection actually is a gift, it is a real gift, although there were people who say that they hate it with a passion. The twin flame connection, initially in the beginning, you get the euphoria, the bubble up. I'm not going to go into all of that stuff. And then you get into the phase, and a great many of you have experienced this, where all of a sudden, all of these issues and everything else starts coming up. And suddenly, you're not functioning from that higher heart center chakra connection anymore. You're functioning from down here, because when you came back to reality, you had to move back to your dominant chakra. And whether we like to believe it or not in your reality, the dominant chakra throughout history has been the emotional center, or the emotional chakra within the center of the belly. And the lower chakras below that have been dominant also in varying degrees. So when you go into the bubble of, you go up into heart space, you stay there, and you've noticed the euphoria, the communication, everything that goes on. So in order for you to actually have benefit and to go back to that state on a perennial basis, first of all, it takes two people to initiate that in a situation. And because predominantly we are a relationship-oriented species, the evolutionary process has keynoted that process specifically for that purpose. So when you begin to come back to your original point of origin, which is the solar plexus chakra, and that's what you do. When you come down from the bubble of, you go right back into the solar plexus reality of belief system. You still have an active heart center, but your focal point is still the solar plexus. So you must get from there to here again. And this can happen on an individual basis also. It doesn't necessarily just apply to twin flames. This goes with soulmates. This goes with any relationship, for that matter. And dealing with the triggers now becomes a serious issue. And I can assure you that when you get into this type of a connection, where you've had that euphoric state of consciousness where everything is in union and in harmony for a short period of time, that experience sets a template within you, a place you want to get to. But again, I emphasize here, there are individuals who do this on their own without the other individual, all right? But 95% of the population on this planet are all relationship-oriented in some way, shape, or form. By choice or by force, we have been conditioned for that in our consciousness. So at some point, in order for us to evolve, we have to eliminate these triggers from the emotional body And it can be done in this way with the two people. Okay, and it's the same thing with anyone else. If anyone, even on an individual pathway, has experienced the euphoria of that self-actualized individual state, they still have to eliminate the solar plexus programming of the triggers. And everybody knows what triggers are, and everybody knows that they all have them. So we're all equal when it comes to that particular department in regards to trigger. So what happens is, as you come back and you relate to this particular type of a situation, the triggers between the two people are going to show up. And like I said, if you really want to experience your triggers, I heartily recommend you join several twin flame groups on Facebook. You will get some of the best input in these twin flame groups on triggers and button pushing that I have ever seen. All right. And I have actually, and I have to say, participated myself in getting my triggers pushed and getting my buttons pushed by dialoguing and getting involved in conversations in groups and with individuals per se. However, having said that, what has happened is this is, as these triggers come forward for you and you become aware of it, that someone's hit your button, I heartily recommend that you, first of all, acknowledge that you have buttons. Some people will actually try to avoid or cop out of dealing with the triggers that they know that they have. And that's not healthy, because let me put it to you this way. Triggers are like wounds that you have in your emotional body. Those wounds have been scabbed over, if you will, by the ego, because it's been hurt, it's been manipulated, it's abused. I get it. I understand that. I did it. Everyone does it. There are no exceptions. But we are rebirthing on this planet. And as a society, we need to understand that eliminating these triggers is necessary. People die every day on this planet because someone got triggered. Literally. Okay, that's how far being triggered can go. And the ego and a trigger is a very dangerous commodity. All right? You only have to look on the news and you can see the results of that. All kinds of violence of different varieties and expressions happens because someone got triggered for some reason by someone else or a situation that happened in their life. So it is necessary that whenever you recognize and see a trigger in yourself, my hearty advice to you is be willing to go back and see if you can find the source of that trigger. Go back in your memory and see if you can locate what you think may be the cause of that particular trigger. And you can have an assortment of different types of triggers, all right? And they can be a yard long of what they are under a list. And as you deal with them, you are releasing and letting go of potentially a health problem. Now, I'm serious, okay? Not dealing with your emotional triggers as you become an adult means that that trigger, that wound that has been covered over and protected by the ego, can actually manifest in a condition, a physical debilitating disease or symptom that can manifest in the physical body. Of course, people will go to the doctor treats the actual physical ailment, but doesn't do anything for the trigger. The trigger is still there. So many conditions that we have right now, for example, I'll pick one, a very popular one. And I think it's clear on the planet now. You find sometimes I use really weird types of definitions to get my point across. Let me mention at this particular point, and I think the last statistics are something like 85% of the population right now have herpes on the planet. I'm probably over a bit, but a lot of people have the herpes virus. A lot of people don't even know they have it. All right. And the herpes virus is activated in individuals by triggers. Some kind of emotional experience happens to the individual that activates the herpes virus. And interestingly enough, the herpes virus always manifests as a general rule, manifests in a general rule in the lower part of the body, and in many cases, in the area of the reproductive organs. Excuse me. So, let me have a sip here. So, what's happening is the triggers that you have, and I want to emphasize this point, have direct relationship to your health. So you need to take this seriously. And anybody that triggers one of your triggers, you should thank them. Actually, you should. So the next time you come and watch one of my videos, and I trigger you, and you get really upset, and you want to write a really nasty comment, you should thank me. You say, Mel, thank you for triggering me. You really hit my button and pissed me off because I made you aware of a sore point, literally a sore point that you have in your emotional body that can ultimately affect your physical condition. The other thing that I want to mention here, and just to complete the picture a little bit, how significant and how important the elimination of triggers in your consciousness is. I want you to think about, and I'm going to touch on this again. You're going to hear me talking about this a lot in videos from this point on, and it's called the endocrine system. Something of which most people know diddly about. I'm not an expert on it by any means. I have rudimentary knowledge of it. But what I see in the dream state or in a vision state, I get it in pictures that give me understanding. I don't need a friggin' book or a teacher, all right, to show me all about the wonderful things they've learned about the endocrine system, and they can diagram it and they can, give you vivid description. I don't need all that shit. That's earth plane crap. I don't need it. I get what I need in the other dimension. And the endocrine system, believe it or not, folks, in your body is directly affected by the triggers. And whenever one of the triggers is activated, you're going to get a corresponding result in the endocrine system. How does that grab you? And the endocrine system is going to secrete hormones into the body in an unbalanced way when the emotional button or trigger has been hit. So you know what? If your health is not the greatest and you're having issues and you can't get any kind of medical indication that there's anything wrong, you may be lousy, literally lousy, with triggers that need to get expressed. And that's one of the great benefits. And I love the twin flame connection for that reason. All right? I love it because you are going to deal with your triggers whether you want to or not. Isn't it a beautiful thing? I always loved growth. Growth is, for most of us, a painful and difficult and a foot-stomping, hair-pulling experience. Isn't it wonderful? And we just keep doing it over and over and over and over again. We just don't get it. I sometimes think, really when I think about some of the stuff is, I listen to women and guys, all I want to do is I want to be in romance with my twin flame. I just want to be in romance. I want to be together with him and in the burbs. I want to live in the house and we got television sets and 2 kids and 3 cars and that's all I want. I don't care about all of that endocrine system. I don't care about ascension. I don't care. I just want a relationship. Okay. If that's all you want, then in my opinion, that's all you're going to get. And when the body starts falling apart, and the one thing that we're all going to have to accept and learn someday, and many of us are going to do it the hard way, is we're all going to learn and grow, whether we like it or not. And our society that's built on the premise of relationships only, if we don't have relationships, there's no society, no structure, no infrastructure, no cities, no towns, no nothing. And that's why our society is in chaos and struggle. Because the relationships we have are not working, they're not functional. So we have to eliminate all of the impediments and blockages that are preventing our relationships from evolving and growing into a higher standard of love at a higher vibration and sexuality at a higher vibration, where we don't have people constantly up on Facebook and doing YouTube videos about sexuality and talking about all they want to do is get laid, which is all I pretty much hear lately from some so-called teachers. And quite frankly, it's boring. Very boring. And I wish they would go and get their triggered and have done with it. And we can get on with more progressive, creative things and start treating ourselves with the respect, the nurturing, and the love that we're so hot to trot to get from somebody else, and do it for the individual that really counts, you. And one of the ways you're going to do that is eliminating your triggers. So, this will happen one way or t'other. T'other. I like that. One way or t'other. And the best place, like I said, to do this is in a Facebook group and in a twin flame group. And there you're going to work your triggers off. All right. But this brings me into another part of what's happening is sooner or later what happened to me is I learned a very valuable lesson in twin flame groups, our own twin flame groups, we have 2 of them, that I don't get offended anymore when people make nasty comments, and I just don't get involved when I can see people are definitely out to see if they can trigger me or find something to hit my button with. What I would appreciate if it does actually work and hits my button, I won't acknowledge it. I'll go and deal with it. And I don't retaliate. And what I've been doing as of late is I don't even participate in any of the twin flame groups anymore, because I noticed something that started happening about 3 years ago. When I got into, I used to be pretty much interested in joining a conversation that would be going on a post. And I would join in and, give my reflection from my perspective and point of view. And I found something very weird was happening. I found out that a lot of people were getting triggered by what I said and misinterpreting. Remember that word, misinterpreting. And I'm saying to myself, I didn't say this to trigger anybody. I was just giving some information, my reflection about the theme or the general situation of a post, and suddenly I end up triggering all of these people. And I get this phase where I sat back and I say, because I always like to check myself first before I check other people out. But I'm saying, okay, what the hell's going on here? What's wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I see this happening with other people also, and they get themselves into a jam in a Facebook group because they're not really doing anything wrong. They're just expressing who they are, but it triggers other people, and the other people respond, and the people think there's something wrong with them when there isn't. So what I learned to do is this: I don't get involved in any kind of conversations or debates in any kind of Facebook groups. I will not get into a debate with anyone because I don't see the point of a debate. It's just, debating is nothing more than an excuse to shoot your mouth off and actually see how impressive you can be from two sides of two different points of view or an opinion, which inevitably accomplishes nothing, all right, and just strokes the egos of one or two people, and somebody wins and somebody loses in that particular perspective. Debating is about as useless as tits on a bull, as far as I'm concerned. It's an entertainment commodity, and that's all it is. It accomplishes actually nothing. Consciousness has to express itself individually first. It doesn't have time for debate. Can you dig that? So now what I do in Facebook groups, if someone asks a direct question where I can give information that's pertinent to their evolutionary process, I will answer. I will give information. I don't debate. I don't jump into themes or posts anymore and get into the conversation because it's pointless. And I see other people are doing the same thing, and I wonder why these people are staying out of it when I know they could add a lot of information to it. They're doing it for the same reason that I'm doing, because at the point you get to a certain point where you know everything you say is going to be misinterpreted depending upon the level of consciousness and the maturity level of the individuals that are involved. And when you're in a group and you speak your truth or your feeling or your sense, there's no way that you're not going to trigger somebody. So the best thing to do is just keep it as simple as possible, and that's what I attempt to do at all particular points. And once you do that, what happens is you are maintaining your individuality. At the same time, you are releasing additional triggers that you may have, not only in the emotional body, but you may have triggers in the mental body also. All right, there are triggers in the mental body, and you need to be aware of that. Now, when I'm talking about triggers in the mental body, all right, this is something you all need to hear. When you are actually thinking, all right, when you're thinking, remember something, you're seeing it. You cannot think. There's no such thing as thinking. We're a seeing species. Everything that we think about, we're seeing it as a visualization, as a picture, as a movie, as a whatever. It doesn't matter how you want to call it. And we have mental triggers also. These triggers, and I want to get into this clearly. Mental triggers are resistance placed by you, the individual, to limit your perspective, because at some point in the past, you've had an experience with your mental body that caused you to pull back. I don't know if that's the correct way of describing it, but that's the way I see it. And when this happens, the mental body that doesn't have emotion builds up almost like a blank spot. That's it, a blank spot. It'll build up a blank spot so that what will happen is you will simply skip over a certain part of your unfoldment and just pretend like it isn't there. So you can have a mental trigger also. So if you're finding yourself in a train of seeing or thought or thinking, and suddenly you find a space or a blank in there, you've come up against a mental trigger. Now, some people would say a blockage. No, it's not a blockage. It's a trigger. That trigger created the blank spot. so that you would simply skip over it, because the mental body is vulnerable also at that particular point. Now, I want to discuss, finally, another trigger. This trigger, no, okay, I'm told we're not ready for that yet. So I'm going to leave it there, all right, at this particular point. When I'm doing a video, sometimes a lot of it is spontaneous, and I kind of tap in and get some additional information. I just got told that not time to give the other piece of it yet from a collective point of view. So I'll leave it there. And the final thing that I'll say about triggers is, triggers are an opportunity for a great lot of growth within you. And when the opportunity comes for you to get triggered, you should actually thank the person that triggered you. You really should, because they made you become more self-aware. They made you feel more vulnerable. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. Vulnerability is a great strength and a great aspect of your character to have. The more vulnerable you become, the more open you are, the more your consciousness can grow. So deal with the triggers and make a game of it. Have fun with releasing your triggers, and laugh at yourself when someone hits your button. It gives you a whole new perspective of how you deal with them in that perception. All right. And I'm going to let it go there. And hopefully everybody has a good day. And hopefully the video a little bit helped. I didn't get too deep into the trigger thing because I know it can be a painful process for some people. So I'll leave it there at this point. Have a great day, everybody.